Welcome back to day 2, or maybe it's day 3 if you came to the swag bag unveiling. I think we could consider that certainly our first day piece of that. So welcome back. We are really excited to close out today's conference summit with some amazing dynamic speakers and engagement. What we've gotten a little bit of chat in the chat room, a little bit of chatter in the chat room, talking about like some items and suggestions for swag bag for next year, which I think that would be really awesome. I think there's always a question of, will these sessions be recorded? And the answer is yes. Almost every single one of the sessions have been recorded. That we'll be able to view later. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, everyone will be, and we'll send those links out and have a posting of where you guys can go view those. I also want to remind you about CEUs. So you will get credits if you're a licensed program for attending these sessions. Just for coming and attending every session, you're probably going to walk away with about 4.5 hours, roughly. And then there's potential, if you watch all the other videos and work with your own licensing rep, then you can also potentially get up to about 10 hours. We know that really helps because if you're full-time, you need about 20 hours a year. So you can almost take care of half your needs in just this summit. So what questions do you guys have? What did you love so much about yesterday? Billy, what was your favorite part yesterday? Man, it's so tough to choose.
I think my favorite part was the Leah with the kids. Okay. Watching those kids so articulate and because of after school.
They did a great job with that. Thank them for that. I missed it. I'm really disappointed. I mean, I'm not disappointed because the session I went to was super awesome, but yeah, I was really bummed. I'm definitely going to be watching that session because I think anytime we get kids at the front seat driving, that is the best. So, well, we are going to kick off today with a really, really dynamic speaker. I have to say, the first time I met Jody was I was chosen as an after school ambassador for the Alliance, and I got to go to DC and meet, and I'm sitting in this kind of boardroom. All I remember is it was completely white, like the table was white, and maybe I'm just making that up, I'm not sure, Jody, but the board, like it was about 12 to 15 people. We're learning all this stuff, and here comes Jody in with what I mean high energy. She brought in, like, we had been talking for quite a while, and so we were just kind of getting that, like, going through our
Oh, Billy, I think you froze.
You did freeze. I was worried it was me.
I will just continue on.
He's back.
You're back.
What was that again?
You froze on us, Billy. Froze.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I did just say I was unstable, so I don't know what you heard or what you didn't hear, but I will go into the intro and just let Jody kind of take over from here. Jody's been the executive director of the After School Alliance since 2005. She oversees federal policy efforts, works with field to help programs tap into federal funding streams, supervises research, and just creates and expands quality after school program, right? Some fun facts like that's so impressive is Jody graduated from Yale with honors in I'm not going to say that, and was elected senior class president. She received her law degree from Harvard, where she was elected class president, first Marshall. As a student, she volunteered in an after-school program. She currently serves as a board member of the Search Institute, the Coalition for Community School Steering Committee, and a trustee of the America's Promise Alliance. Her husband and her 2 kids live in DC. Welcome, Jody. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Billy. And thank you, all of you, because honestly, any energy and excitement that you see and hear is because of you. And everybody at the After School Alliance based in Washington, DC, We do what we do because you inspire us. You are changing lives, you are creating opportunities, and I am so proud to be part of this field. And as Billy said, I think the most important parts of my resume for you to know are that I taught in an after-school program when I was in college, and it showed me how we really can touch kids' lives and reach them on an individual level. Also, I was a big sister all through law school. So Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the mentoring program, again, really related to our field. And I did a bunch of work with incarcerated youth, really trying to use Individuals with Disabilities Education Act to bring resources to them. So that's enough about me. Many of you saw the tremendous session with Leah and the youth. I don't know how we can beat that, because those of you that were part of it saw, and those of you that haven't will hopefully catch it on video. The youth are extraordinary. And in the 17 years that I have been working with the After School Alliance, we started bringing youth to DC and realized immediately that they were a really powerful and authentic voice. And I do want to give kudos to Leah, because they have really grown our program from bringing youth to Washington to educate policymakers to really bringing youth into every aspect of our work, where they're even helping us judge applications for grant awards, so that we really are being true, not just to the adult voices in the field, which we strive to do, but to the youth voices too. So as I said, I'm in Washington, D.C. This is the Capitol behind me. Actually, if I open my windows, the Capitol would be behind me, but it wouldn't be as nice of a view. So we're going to kick this off. We're going to talk a lot about youth voice and what we've done to get youth voice into after school, but I also, given the times, wanted to just do, and given that I'm sitting here in Washington, an overview of what's going on with after school nationally, particularly with COVID dollars and our surveys of the after school field. So with that, next slide. So back in 2020, the After School Alliance did a survey of parents throughout the United States, and this was literally completed just before the pandemic hit. And what we found was not surprising, that demand for after school programs is through the roof. So for every child that's in an after school program, and that's 7.8 million nationwide, there's almost 25 million whose parents want them to be in programs. That is huge. And I think with COVID, that has been exacerbated. It's for every child, it's one, there's three. For those of you that are in rural parts of South Dakota, which is most of the state, it's four. So even bigger numbers of kids whose parents really want them to be in programs, but they're either not something they can afford or they don't exist. We're doing a little bit better with summer learning programs and the number of kids that are participating. I think that's probably gone up with COVID dollars. But again, for every kid that's been in a program, there's at least one more that would like to be in a high quality program. So that's our work cut out for us. How do we get more resources to all of you so that you can serve more kids with high quality programs? For the first time in the almost 20 years, 17 years I've been in this job, we have access to real money. I don't know how many of you are following what's going on at the federal level, but in all of the COVID relief packages, there have been dollars that can be used for after school. And we've been tapping into childcare dollars, we've been tapping into food dollars, we've been tapping into education dollars. And in the most recent bill, which was passed last year, the American Rescue Plan, there was $30 billion set aside to allow kids to help them recover from the pandemic. And recovery was absolutely phrased in terms of not just of academic, but in terms of social interaction, emotional well-being. And we were able, and this was huge, thanks in large part to all of you on the ground, to get explicit language into the bill that said after school and summer learning programs are good uses of these dollars. And I should thank all of you, because I think that during this pandemic, you put after school on the map. Our programs immediately started offering both virtual and in-person programming, particularly to children of essential workers. It was noticed. We saw all of the visits going on, the legislators saw it, and that's why we're able to get these dollars. To date, we think about $3.6 billion has gone into the after school field, and we are still working on that. Most of the state plans, so the states have about $8.45 billion at the state level to give to after school. Most of those have been completed, and most of the work now is really trying to convince local education agencies, Title I schools to partner with community-based organizations to create and or expand after-school programs. Next slide. I wanted to flag, if you don't know about the After School Alliance, we have a ton of resources that are free and meant for you. And they can be used for everything for writing a grant application to facts and figures to how to write an op-ed. And one of all of that is at www.afterschoolalliance.org. But this particular site, we have been leading an effort with all of the major after-school providers across the country to provide tools, resources, toolkits to help you tap into these COVID federal dollars. So www.helpkidsrecover.org. We have success stories, we have examples, we have how much money's in every state to really help you access those dollars. And when you do, please let us know, because one of our biggest goals is not just to access these dollars now, but to make sure that after their access, we don't lose ground, so that we can show what we have built with them. And then in my job, advocate for more resources to replenish them. I think it's also super important to hear stories, because we are hearing a lot about school districts creating after school and summer, but we don't know if they're really creating after school and summer programs. We think in some cases it's like tutoring hours, or they're just opening their doors later. And we are trying to dig deep to show that what we all know, that with partnerships in the community, that is when that are really localized, and we bring in those local actors, that's when the magic really works for our kids. And that's when we can leverage all sorts of resources to make the sum greater than each of its parts. Next slide. So one of the other things we have been doing throughout this pandemic, and a huge thank you to all of you that have participated in our surveys, is we have been surveying programs and parents so that we can have a sense of the immediate needs of the field and advocate for them at the national, state, and local level. And so one of the things that we have found is that more and more programs are open in some capacity. As you can see, spring of 2020, just a handful that were serving kids of essential workers. That started growing, particularly as many places created after-school hubs where kids who could not virtually learn at home could come into these hubs and get in-person enrichment and do virtual learning in the hubs. To now, I think that I personally, as a parent of 2 kids, could not get my kids to interact with other kids soon enough. I think that there's so much attention on the academic losses, but I think for so many of our kids, those social losses were huge. The access to the enrichment, the access to other kids, the access to caring adults. So it's really nice to see that more and more programs are opening up. We're still not back to 100%, but we're working on it. Next slide. And again, as I mentioned this before, you all really put after school on the map during this pandemic. We knew the difference that these programs were making, but I think that particularly with schools closed, it was a wake-up call that learning happens beyond the school walls and beyond the school day, and that after school providers are really an essential part of a child's entire learning ecosystem and community. And so again, what we saw is immediately programs started serving youth remotely. A lot of programs were delivering meals, lesson plans, doing check-ins both by phone, Zoom, and even in person on porches where they couldn't reach kids by phone or Zoom. And then in person to really doing that kind of connection for kids when the schools were closed. Next slide. Also very important, what you are doing, parents want it. And that's really important, because what we want to be doing is serving our kids, our parents, and our communities. And as I said before, there's been all of this attention on academic loss, but it's really hard to learn anything if if you've been isolated and depressed and not around other people. And what we have heard loud and clear from parents and from providers is that they want their kids to have a chance to be kids, and they want enrichment, they want activity, they want their kids to be outdoors, they want them to have fun. And that was an explicit part of the legislation too, where we even had funding explicitly for non-academic activities in summer and in after school. Next slide. And so a little bit more from the survey, then we'll get to the youth, which is, again, this is a survey of program providers now, not parents. Again, really highlighting the non-academic components of after school and how important those are for our kids, because, for so many of them, after school is the place where they're seen, where they feel safe physically and mentally, where they can be themselves, and what we do best, which is, getting kids out of their comfort zones, challenging them, and developing a host of skills with collaboration, leadership, teamwork, and all of these skills are absolutely essential to creating our workforce of the future. Next slide. So the big thing, and when we open this up to Q&A, I would love to hear from all of you, is that there is a massive staffing shortage going on in our field. It's not just our field. Of course, you're hearing this about educators across the board, but it's not a big secret that many of the wonderful people that are in the after school field are underpaid and don't have a lot of benefits. It's something that we've needed to address for a long time. And I think now our feet are really being held to the fire to address it. What we do have going for us is that the work is meaningful. So that really does help attract a lot of people, but staff shortages have been growing. Unlike, a McDonald's or a Starbucks, we can't raise the price of the items we sell because we're not selling items. So for so many of our programs, if you're relying on parent fees or federal funds or grant funds, if those don't increase, then it's really hard to increase wages for our staff. The good news is that in places where programs have been able to tap into these federal COVID dollars, they have been able to increase wages and benefits. So one of the things to be thinking about is all of these federal dollars can be a way to increase support for staff. And of course, professional development, which you're all doing right now, is also a key thing. And we are working with AIR, who's doing a massive study of our field so that we can really get a sense of what we can do both as advocates, as program directors, as site directors, as people that care about kids, to recruit the most committed and best possible staff to work with our kids in programs across America. Next slide. As I mentioned before, we are seeing that the programs that can tap into COVID dollars are doing a better job at recruiting and retaining staff. Obviously, money is not the only solution, but it absolutely helps. We're seeing all sorts of creative solutions come up to try to support staffers, and we are sharing those. So things like free childcare, sign-on bonuses, additional paid time off, new health benefits, trying to create professional opportunities to really encourage more staff. We're also trying to get a handle on how many AmeriCorps workers are working in our space, particularly college students that can be part-time AmeriCorps workers and work part-time, get paid, ideally get college credit for being in our space. So looking at what are some new pathways to really encourage college students, graduate students, maybe paraprofessionals that want to go on to be teachers, to be working in after school, gaining credentials and getting paid while they work towards their career. Next slide. This is a disappointing slide to me. Going back with the helpkidsrecover.org site, we are really encouraging, we've been working very closely with the Department of Ed, having seminars, town hall meetings, webinars, working with at the national level superintendents to try to convince school districts who have the dollars from COVID to speak to after school programs as they plan their programming. And what we're finding is where it's happening, it's extraordinary. But when you're looking at 80% of programs not getting those dollars, it's not happening in enough places. So we'll continue to work on that. We'll continue to share practices. I am absolutely convinced that the data coming out of the places where there's collaboration is going to be stronger on kid success. And hopefully we can use that to keep propelling more investments in our space. Next slide. This is the best part. So some of you got to see our kids in person. For those of you that didn't, here's a little taste.
I am part of the robotics team. What I love about it is the fact that I get to work with a lot of people.
I've always had a passion for public speaking, for advocacy, and speech and debate gave me the access to do just that.
I feel like the most meaningful part of my after-school program would probably be the sense of community and family.
They're in a more safe environment where they can still be with friends and talk and have a fun time.
My after-school program has been very important. It gives us a hint of normal life before the pandemic.
Just that little time with those activities just really takes that stress away.
It just keeps us on our toes and keeps our minds working.
Even though it's 1 hour, it gives me hope that I'm not going to be alone for very much longer.
After-school programs gave me the ability and the opportunity to do the things that we've always been told that we're too small to do.
Tatar has been trying to help us achieve something that we wouldn't normally achieve.
They want to help you. They want you to be happy. It's a place where you can feel comfortable being who you are. That's something really great that I think a lot of people would benefit from.
After-school programs are vital and important, and we need funding to make sure that it can be sustainable for all.
Well, thank you so much, Leah. As you all have heard, Leah is the mastermind behind this program that is so important. And the messenger and the message are both equally important. And there's no way I could do justice to that the way all of those kids from across America showed how after school has mattered to them during this pandemic. So it's been really extraordinary to work with these kids. Our ambassadors have done unbelievable things. Our youth ambassadors in what you just saw were our ambassadors from last year. Our youth ambassadors have been interviewed by Secretary of Education Cardona. They have participated in town halls with US senators. They've participated in town halls with US representatives. They have given briefings to the National Conference of State Legislators, where they've spoken to state legislators to encourage them to do more at the state level. They've been parts of national town halls that we've used to celebrate after school, including Lights On after school. They have had private meetings with the White House Domestic Policy Council. So this is the group of adults that create all of the policy and oversee all the policy for the White House. They have been advising the US Department of Education. They've been creating all sorts of videos that all of you can use as well, and you can use as models for Youth Voice. And they've been writing blogs for us to get out the word and to share their voice. And so I would encourage all of you, not just to tap into our youth who are amazing, but to think about ways that you can use youth in your community to really raise their voices, empower them, and then most of all, make a difference, because they will. Next slide. And that's it. So I'm going to bring Leah on as well. And what I really wanted to do is answer any questions you have. So if you have questions about the youth and the youth voice, Leah and I can both try to answer that. We have done, one of the extraordinary things we've done is the youth have to apply. So instead of having adults nominate youth, this is very much from day one. driven by the youth. And Leah can talk more, for those of you that missed it, about some of the trainings we do for the youth on a very regular session, including media training. But I also wanted to make myself available to all of you to answer any questions you have about after school nationally, after school alliance, challenges that you're facing that we might be able to address. You know, and take it from there, because we care very much about what's going on in South Dakota. And I want to thank Billy for the swag that he sent us, that is in our office being enjoyed by our whole team. And I also want to thank all of you, because if any of you have been around for a while, something like 10, 11 years ago, I did Lights On with all of you at Mount Rushmore, and it was absolutely extraordinary. My then 8-year-old daughter came with me, and she still talks about it, even though she's now 19. So you have, and it is truly, lighting up Mount Rushmore was one of the most extraordinary experiences I've ever had, and by far one of the most extraordinary Lights On events I have ever attended. So bravo. I love your state. And yes, Billy's saying I need to come back. I totally agree. Now that things are opening up, I need to come back.
I do want to say, Jody, that I think this year is even going to be more exciting, because it looks like the next Lights On After School event with Sodexeca will be at the Dignity statue, which is going to be huge. That's a big change for us, right? To really honor and represent the Native culture in South Dakota. So that's a change, moving from Mount Rushmore to Dignity, but just really celebrating what that looks like. So.
Well, keep me in touch as you plan all of this, because if I can get myself back to South Dakota, I would be thrilled to join you all.
Jody, this is Billy Joe. And in South Dakota, we know our schools received money that was marked after school or beyond the school day. But it's really hard to approach that money and to try to collaborate with them. Do you have any good talking points that small schools, small programs can take to their schools or school board?
So the answer is yes. And number one, I would start with going to our site, helpkidsrecover.org. And I think the data is really important on one hand. So we have a lot of data that really shows how, depending on what the school board's focused on, how after school is essential to kids, both academically, but also to their growth. I would also say, and getting to the whole point of this topic, the youth. I think that what we need across the board, and districts have been encouraged to do this, is we need our youth and our parents to be making that case, that they want the after school enrichment, that they want to be busy during these hours, that they want the community partners, because my coming in from Washington would be useless, right? It really has to be local, and it has to be the local people that know the school board. And so I would encourage, and I see Leah smiling, so I might kick it over to them, but this is a really good way to empower youth. They could write letters to the school board, they could write letters to the editor, maybe an op-ed, do a sign-on letter, really saying we want more opportunities. And even for the middle school and high school youth, we want them to help talk about exactly what they want to be doing, right? What kinds of programming they want in after school. I would also say that we have a lot of best practices. So I think a lot of school districts, there's a lot of reasons why they don't want to go there. Some of them are just, it's bureaucratic, but to really showcase what's happening in other communities. And I think the more we can showcase other communities in South Dakota, better, to highlight, if you share your funds with community-based organizations to create after school and summer, these are the kinds of successes you can see. And if you don't, you know, it's not, you're not going to be able to leverage as much. But I'm going to kick it over to Leah to see what they want to add about the youth.
Yeah, so those of you that were in my session yesterday, you probably heard me say that I see my job as providing a platform to youth, for youth to share their voices. And that's what I found working with these youth, is that they have a lot to say and they just don't have the connections that we as adults have to find the people to share what their thoughts and needs are. So just echoing everything that Jody said, I think that one of our responsibilities as adults with connections to these youth and connections to other adults that can make a difference is to just make those connections so that youth can directly relate their needs and desires to the people that can make them happen.
And I would also, you know, I'm looking at Billy Joe's comment, and I think it's even more than not wanting to recreate the wheel, because obviously we have an expertise in the out of school time pace. It's really, I think right now more than ever, our schools need our support. So schools are struggling to, you can tell me if it's the same in South Dakota, but I can tell you here in Washington, D.C., there is a massive teacher shortage. Teachers are stressed. I have friends whose kids are literally, they're taking paraprofessionals, janitors, anyone they can to sit in a classroom because teachers are leaving or they're sick, they're out. And so I think part of it, you know, is really showcasing why our field can be such an add-on to supplement what's happening in school and really reach kids in a different way and continue that learning in a way that the schools cannot do, and in a way that school staff is really stressed out to do. So we want to take some of that pressure off. And that's not to say our staff is burnt out too, and we need to take care of them, but really to leverage the two things together is so much better for students. And again, we have on our Help Kids Recover, we have a lot of like actual data that you can use, whether you're making the academic argument, whether you're making an argument around non-academic skills, whether you're making an argument about what parents need. I mean, that's the other thing to think about, even parent surveys, because when we've done them nationally, it is loud and clear that parents want their kids to be in enriching environments outside of school to supplement that. Is anybody on this call getting American Rescue Plan dollars from their school district?
We do have some school official people on the session, so definitely that answer is yes. But
because I would love to hear from somebody who is doing this, particularly a school official. If they are doing it, what was the most persuasive thing for you to partner? Was it a pre-existing relationship? And if you were not partnering, what would be the most important thing that we could, as a field, that your community after school program could come in and say to get you to partner with them? And who do you think would be an important messenger? Not to put anyone on the spot.
While those people hopefully jump on, I do want to say that for sure, Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs, especially, and some educational co-ops received money through the GEAR funding through the governor's office.
Right.
And we did see that's all that's listed on the Department of Ed website for us. So they're pretty transparent in like who is getting how much money. And so I think there are definitely some Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs for sure that are doing some big work.
Which is great. And we've seen, and we expected this, right? That in some places, the state level money and the governor's money has been a little easier to tap into than each school district. But one of the things, particularly at the national level, we're really focused on is what are the barriers, right? And in some places, there's nothing we can do. We're just not going to be able to tap into those monies. But in some places, we absolutely can. And so what are the kinds of arguments, the kinds of messengers that can make that happen? I can say that, right, one of the other strongest things to do is, as you know, going back to Billy's point, is to showcase what's already there, right? Like I've been to South Dakota, I've seen your programs, they are amazing. To showcase how with more resources, we might be able to serve more kids. And so that very much, these are things that already exist, the infrastructure's there. How do we use the existing infrastructure to expand our services?
And Alan posted in the chat box the dashboard. So Alan and Stephanie are with the title programs and 21st century programs from the Department of Ed, and they've joined us today. So they posted that dashboard so everyone can kind of get a good glimpse. I can speak for my former employer, the Boys and Girls Club, that some of the gear money that they received went into like student success. So really working with that social recovery piece. And in one of the breakout sessions, Naomi Blank is going to be talking specifically. So she is the student success director for the Boys and Girls Club of the Sioux Empire, and she's going to be talking about some of the stuff that they're doing on that realm in the breakout sessions next. So
that's awesome. And I said, we're trying to track all of the different funding sources that are going into after school right now so that we can, you know, get a handle on all of that. And again, all of these, one of the things I absolutely want to encourage all of you is any of these federal dollars that you are getting, please share your success stories. It is absolutely essential that we let policymakers know at every level. So local, state, national, where the dollars were put to good use, because as we all know, there's going to be plenty of stories of where they were not. I think we are one of the big success stories. The other thing is, you know, sitting in Washington, you know, where we have, you know, people talk about trillions of dollars. We're talking about billions, which is a hell of a lot of money, but it's really not for the federal budget. So if we can build this right, you know, I think we can go in, me, our team, and really advocate for more funding at the federal level. And absolutely, we're seeing states around the country start to pick up too. So getting governor's money is great. We are seeing several governors of, you know, red states and blue states talk about expanding state funding for after school because of the difference they've seen it make during the pandemic. So I am really, really hopeful that we are one of the fields that are going to come out of this stronger with more recognition and with the ability to serve more kids. I'm reading your comments on the side. Feel free to jump in person. And I love the comment right now about taking young people to adult meetings and having them hear what the adults say. And equally, the adults need to hear what the kids have to say, because as you saw from the videos, our kids are so articulate and so passionate and so thoughtful. And I think that, you know, if there's a disconnect, I actually trust them to, with some of the right coaching, to get through that disconnect. And Leah, I don't know if you want to add anything on that comment.
No, just speaking to, right, we're the advocates for these opportunities. So it's our responsibility to make sure that what we're advocating for is aligned with what youth and their families need. And part of that is listening to the youth themselves. We've been talking a lot about expanding opportunities, but also making sure that those opportunities are high quality experiences that give students a variety of opportunities is really, really important. And that's definitely, I think, what we're getting from youth now.
And I would also emphasize, and this is in our helpkidsrecover.org, some advice on this is use your media. So use your local radio, local papers, local TV stations, particularly, you know, we use this with Lights On After School as one example, but seize every opportunity you have to highlight what's going on. because it really does get attention. And then when you get the local media, send it to all your policymakers. So send it to your, city council or county executive, send it to the school board, send it to your members of Congress. And again, it's a great opportunity to feature kids, and the media loves the kids. So if you can, it's another way to elevate their voices, but then really use it to bring about change and to bring about education. Because one of the things that, I think has helped us take a step forward is so many people often, think about after school and it's a knee jerk, like keep kids safe, which is great. We do that. But they start realizing what's going on, whether it's coding, whether it's theater, whether it's, help with tutoring, mentoring, all of the extraordinary things that are happening. That's when you see the eyes pop. And that's why, we've seen a growth in demand for after school programs, because parents are seeing what's happening. And when they see the learning and the excitement that's going on, they want it for their kids. And now we just have to get, the policymakers to keep up with the needs of the parents and the kids. Anybody want to share a great story about a youth that you used? You guys everybody's so quiet. I'm on my second cup of coffee.
I think we should have sent more coffee. I think I sent After School Alliance a whole box of coffee, because you guys did so much crazy work.
Thank you.
Which is great. But I think I should have sent everyone else a little bit more coffee. I think they're taking in a lot of information.
It looks like Mark has a leadership group for high school youth. Yeah. Is that I don't know, maybe we can bring him on and I can ask you a few questions, Mark. I'm curious how you select this group. Is it self-selected?
They self-select. Our group does. They elect their leadership each year. We guide the group. They have a few things that they do in the community. We have a stretch of highway they clean up. Mostly, this group has gone back and forth from advising us on policies or things they'd like to see, to just advising the program on activities they want for high school students or program, what they want to do on Friday nights, how late they want to stay open. We can't do everything. If they had their choice, they'd be here until 2 a.m. and expect the staff member to be here, but that's their schedule, I really struggle with getting them to step up to leadership outside of the club. I don't know if it's a safety issue or a confidence issue. I think sometimes our youth still don't feel like what they say is important, or they have a lot to share that anyone would listen to. And so that's, I think, our next step. We just hired a new high school activities director, so we're kind of rebuilding that group and that program. Let me get my door. I'll go on mute here.
No, it's good. We know everybody has work going on too.
That's awesome.
Lee, any thoughts to empower the kids more?
Yeah, what I would say is just more and more opportunities, right, to be leaders. I think that leadership is something that takes practice. We like to think that leadership is something that some folks are inherently born with the capability to be a leader and others are not. And I personally don't think that that's true at all. I think, to those of you, again, who were in my session yesterday, one of our youth, Minche Kim from New Jersey, is part of her robotics team, first robotics team. And she said that it took the opportunity of being a youth ambassador to understand that what she had to say to folks was valuable and that people would want to listen. And it's not that she didn't have other opportunities for leadership within her program or other experiences that she had. It was just one more opportunity, right, that honed in, oh, people do listen when I have things to say. And so it's just practicing and honing in on that skills. I think that youth rarely seek out those opportunities. And it's amazing when we can go to our youth and say, hey, why don't you try this? And more often than not, they'll think about it and give it a try. And that will just hone their leadership skills as they keep practicing them. So, right, the topic of today overall is we need more opportunities for our youth. And I think that leadership is just one of those opportunities that youth need more opportunities to practice.
So this is just a best practice that I've seen that I think is really extraordinary. There's a program called the After School All Stars. It's middle school students, and one of the things they have their kids do is they identify a leader in the community to interview, and they go in and they meet with this community leader to ask them about how they got where they are. And what they found is, one, these community leaders love talking about how they got where they are to kids and inspiring them. But it also really gives the kids an opportunity to interact one-on-one and start getting comfortable with community leaders. And in this particular organization, it's led to some fundraising too, because these community leaders suddenly, have a stake in the kids and what's happening in the program. But again, so it's the adults really creating the opportunities and a little bit of the coaching, and then letting the kids take off. So just getting them, comfortable. And in many cases, it's like, some of these kids have never been to like a law office, and they're going in there and you're trying to pair them with something that might be a career for them. And they're, going and suddenly feeling comfortable talking to a partner at a law firm, or, a doctor, or whatever, a firefighter, whatever the leader is in that field. So there's some very creative ways, and we're going to keep collecting all of those stories and ways to empower our youth, because I have to say it's a thing that, especially when things are looking dark and grim in the middle of a pandemic, it's a thing that gives us hope.
Could I jump in just one more time? We have a program in Rapid City called Teen Up, and it's kind of a program that's developed out of another program called Authentic Youth Engagement. Teen Up is a group that meets monthly of, any teenagers that wish to be a part of the group. But it's very informal. They have an adult leader, and these students decide what they want to do. Some of the projects they've taken on are to run a senior prom at the senior center that's across the street from our club. They have one student who volunteered to take senior pictures for students that couldn't afford to take senior pictures. So this group is very self-directed. They find their own volunteerism. They also motivated themselves enough. They had liaisons on the school board, and they had a group that met with the mayor even. And I don't know the status of those now since COVID, but before COVID, you'd actually see those youth up on the dais with councilmen. And they couldn't have a vote, but they could have a say. And those are the kind of things that have happened out of trying to develop this group and empower these teenagers to do what they think needs to be done and not wait for the adults to do them. And so that, I think, is kind of a good model if we can keep promoting kids to get into those kind of activities. And anyone can join and do their own thing. It's kind of a forum for encouragement, support, and direction from other youth, and then they ask each other to help out. So
yeah, I love that. And what I think one of the magic pieces there is that it's authentic. And the great news for us when we want authentic after school voices is looking to the kids that we're serving, because they're usually there because they want to be there. They could walk with their feet if they weren't. So they're, so letting them know that their voice can help advocate to support, their programs that matter so much to them. And I think that authentic piece is absolutely essential, right? Like, we don't want to be putting words in the kids' mouths at all, or, we just want to help them frame their words to be most effective.
I always tell our youth, right, that they're the experts of their own experiences and that there are no wrong answers. So I think everything that we do with our youth, and it sounds like with Teen Up, that's exactly what you're doing as well.
I would be remiss to not share a quick photo. So we had these gentlemen, we had Senator Thune come tell us that he wanted to do a tour. You know, we always, when I was at the Boys and Girls Club, we always asked Congress people to come speak, right? Like that's always an open invitation. And usually they'll give you a, maybe a 24-hour notice of like, hey, I'm in town, I would love to do that. And these gentlemen, who we had been working with for the Youth of the Year, so they were well spoken. I think one of the best part is like this picture encompasses the organic conversation that they had, right? Like we put them in front of him, and it was just really almost spiritual as to like how open and honest they were with them. He said, "What do I need to do?" He asked them, "What do I need to do as a congressman?" And Alzar, who's in the like cream colored shirt, leans back and says, "Well, I think you need to start listening more." Right. And for an 18-year-old to tell a top ranking US senator something that bold was pretty mind blowing. And he responded really well. I also want to say that for both of them, they went outside and got their, this was in May, so they got their graduation invitations and gave it to him, asking him to come. Obviously he couldn't come, but he sure did send all of them a gift directly from him. So I think that really speaks when you give kids opportunity. I mean, I've had the luxury of going to DC and talking to a lot of folk, but it wasn't until we started taking youth to DC or putting youth in front of them that we really made an impact. It was like, great story, thanks for all you do, next person, right? Like it's we can really give all that data, but when they start telling their own story, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, I say there's no better way to educate policymakers than having them come to sites and talk to kids and see the kids in their element. And you're right, like it's wonderful when we can bring them to Washington, especially from a state like South Dakota. You know, if I bring someone from New York to Washington, that there's too many New Yorkers in Washington already. But I think that makes big difference. But wherever possible, I think when you can see and interact with the kids in person, it changes. And, you know, Senator Thune is so important. He's a member of leadership. One of the things I did want to say, which I think has been really extraordinary about our field is, unfortunately, things in Washington have been getting more and more polarized over the past couple of years. And after school has really tried very hard to stay out of that fray. And when we do events, you will see support from both sides of the aisle. You will see members that you think when you read about the paper don't get along, but they actually do get along when they come to our events because it's about the kids. And I think that, again, this gets back to, and youth voice is a key part of it. We build support for our field by showing what's happening on the ground in communities. And as long as we are focusing on those kids and those local communities, that's how we get the members of Congress to understand that this makes a difference. So kudos for having the senator come. Senator Thune's been doing, I mean, he's actually been pretty engaged on after school, which is awesome.
I think with that, I think we're gonna say thank you to our amazing speakers today. Thank you for everyone that participated. And I think we're gonna take a quick break. The sessions for the breakouts start in 10 minutes, so that now you have some time to go to the restroom and
just
quick
plug, which is, you know, we're at www.afterschoolalliance.org. I know far too many of you were silent, and I know you have questions, and I know you have things you want to showcase. So please don't hesitate. You know, share them with Billy. We work hand in hand. Share them with us. We want to hear your successes, but we also want to hear your challenges, because whether it's regulation or legislation, that's how we get driven, by doing what we can to support you. Please do check out our website, because there's all sorts of resources, and we want to make sure they're the resources you need. And if they're not, again, come back to us, because our job is to help you serve kids. And yes, you're totally right. We need to educate teachers. Principals can be some of our biggest allies.
Awesome. Thank you guys
so much. Billy. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy your breakouts.